What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Wealth Webinar, a show where we talk about money, but more specifically, how you can take back control of your money by you becoming your own bank. We've been doing this show now, I don't know how long, a long time, and we've never missed one because consistency and persistency are really important. But you know what? I watched a video a long time ago. This military man stood up there and he said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if we were to miss one of these Wednesdays, well, that's how we're going to have to do everything. We just start missing things and then we just start making things up. And that's not how we operate here. When we commit to something, we do it consistently and persistently. So here we are. Welcome. Here's what you're going to learn today. This is going to be an epic webinar. We've got Harris and George from CMG. We got Greg on here. We got Mr. Joseph K, Mr. HELOC, they call him. And today we're going to be doing the fourth of a four-part series all about being house rich, cash poor, but how to change that. And today I think is just the perfect sum up where we're going to just go into case study, case study, case study. You know what? It's great to listen to myself and Harrison and Joe and Stephen and Craig and who'd I miss? I missed Greg. It kind of sounds the same, but it's great hearing us explain it all. And up to now, you've probably got a pretty good grasp on what a first lien HELOC is, how you can use that sucker. You probably, if some of you know what we're talking about, you got the Oreo. And again, get your head out of the gutter. We're not talking about that Oreo, although some of you would probably say that's way more fun than being here. So we talked about the Oreo. We talked about how to use these to solve some problems like paying off debt, how to use them to solve other problems like investing in businesses and all sorts of fun stuff. But today we're just going to put the rubber to the road. We're going to talk about case studies. Now, let's go over some housekeeping for Wealth Webinar. If you've got to go to the bathroom, just raise your hand and we'll dismiss you. Just go to the bathroom, pee in your pants. I really don't care. Try to have a diaper on if you're going to do that. I guess it's a lot cleaner and no cleanup after. You just throw the diaper in the garbage can and all done. Thank God I'm done with those diaper days. Yes. But, I hear Joe still likes the diaper stuff, right, Joe? I'm just messing with you. I'm in one of those weird moods. But with that, also a couple other housekeeping things. We've got a first of a kind. And that is a 2-day IBC intensive. That's right, Infinite Banking Concepts Intensive. So we're doing a 2-day training where we're going to literally blueprint things, but we're going to do some things for the very first time. We are, for the first time, going to use our pride and joy, our proprietary software, our revolutionary software called the Vault. And we're going to show you some things that we've never shown because you've never been able to see them. We've never been able to do what we can do now because today we can mathematically solve everything. So when people are like, oh, that concept, it's a scam. Really? Let me show you the mathematics, and then you can decide whether or not it's a scam. Oh, that system, that IBC thing or velocity banking, that doesn't pay off debt faster. Really? You want to put a wager on that? How about $500,000 or how about 350 million bucks? That good? Yeah, well, let's see who's right here because we've got the math, baby. That's right. We got the math, and we're going to show you that math a little bit today. But today, I'm going to turn this sucker right over to Greg, and Greg's going to kick us off. We got some amazing case studies. The first one, the owner of a free and clear home, Anna. So Greg, kick it off. I'm going to give you the stage and give you the ability to share. There you go.
Thanks for that, Chris. Really looking forward to walking through some of these case studies. And just so you know, guys, like we've talked about this the whole time. This whole panel's talked about this. All of us practice these things. Right? This is not something we sell just because we need to make a commission. All of us practice these things. The people in these case studies. So guys, when we talk about this, and we talk about the owner of a free and clear home, Anna is my mom. The next one is one of my best friends. The next one's one of my business partners. The next one is myself. So when we talk through case studies, these are not from corporate. These are not from some made up scenario. These are real people that Harrison and I have helped with actual all-in-one loans that I talk to all the time. So as we review these and as we talk through them, I just want you guys to know that these are real people and people that I care deeply about, and I wouldn't put them into a product that I didn't believe in myself. So let's start to move through these. My mom, Anna, she met her husband, Patrick. My mom and my dad divorced 15 years ago. So, 10 years down the road, she remarried again. And so they were a blended family, and they're kind of, they're marrying in their late 50s. And so they've got some things, right? My mom was living in her home, and Patrick was living in her home. And so they decided after they got married to move into Patrick's residence, but they knew that they wanted to kind of have a bit of a fresh start. So the plan was always to sell Patrick's residence. They did that and they bought a home together. Now, after they bought this home and we started talking about the all-in-one loan, they decided they wanted to make the jump and they wanted to refinance. And they had some equity. They'd put, 25 or 30% down. And so they decided with this refinance, once they got into the all-in-one loan, they were going to use some of that equity to pay off some of their consumer debt. They had some credit cards and like a smaller student loan that Patrick had co-signed on for one of his kids. And so they rolled that debt into the all-in-one. And with their cash flow that they had created by paying off some of this consumer debt and then leveraging their excess kind of lazy money, they began to pay down principal on this all-in-one loan. Fast forward, I think it was about 10 months. And between the equity they had and their aggressive payment strategy using the all-in-one loan, they looked and they thought, we have more equity in this all-in-one loan than we thought we would. So what's the most effective use of that? They're in their late 50s and they're staring at retirement. And so they were thinking about how do we limit expenses once we get to a place where we're on fixed income? And they looked at my mom's house that she had moved out of when she got married to Patrick, and they had a renter in there now. And she had owned it. It was a smaller home for a while, and they owed about $100,000. So they paid off that mortgage balance using their all-in-one loan. And over the next several months, they evaluated several things, kind of targeting a little bit earlier retirement they previously anticipated. So they had some retirement funds that were making a little bit less money in terms of returns than they liked. They took a lump sum of those retirement funds and they started to aggressively attack this all-in-one loan to the point where by the time they retired, and they retired 2 years earlier than they thought they would, they had paid off the entirety of their all-in-one loan, which included their primary residence and the balance from their rental property that now was just a cash flowing asset with no direct debt associated with it. And they got to retire 2 years early because of the lightening of the load of those two significant bills. They got to retire 2 years early because of their strategies they used from the all-in-one. Harrison, comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. So obviously, as you were describing, it is your mom, and some of the uniqueness associated with this that they already did have that massive asset account outside of their homes. They were fortunate enough to be able to do that. However, it's not every single scenario. Obviously, it's easy to talk about our mom and our dad and some of these people that have gotten into this all-in-one product in their 50s, and even honestly in the later 50s, some people even in their early 60s, and they don't have this big asset outside of the equity in their home. And as we've kind of been working with Chris and the team over there, we've seen people be able to not only eliminate additional expenses in their life, like consumer debt, plus the payment on their home, but be able to build up that retirement, whether through other real estate acquisitions. I mean, I've had somebody, I was talking with Chris about this the other day. I had somebody that was about in their 40s starting their business. It was a Turo business. They had plenty of equity in their home. They took the money and started buying vehicles that in an area in Arizona that was super hot for Turo. And now they have essentially this multi-car fleet that they're making income from, that they, instead of deploying real estate, they put into another business. But you could just remove other investments such as rental property or Turo and just replace that with kind of where you are looking to accomplish. Now, I think that in hindsight, I wish I had known more from Chris before then, because what they should have done from their all-in-one, put it into a policy and then purchase the vehicles from the policy so they could have taken advantage of the constant growth of their funds over in the policy and also the income that they were receiving from Turo, which is just, I think that is again, I'm always learning when being on this call with Craig and Joe, Steven, and obviously Chris. It's always just, hey, have you ever considered this? Hey, have you ever looked into maybe way? And I just find that there's more than one way to solve this problem. I would say skin the cat, but I'm pretty sure there are many cat lovers in this conversation. So I'm not going to say that one. And so in reality, it's just like figuring out what that next step really is. And I think that the whole life, Paul, my wife and I have begun the process with our own journey on that. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And once you have cleared those debts and you've cleared that equity, stepping into that process of funding something like that becomes easier to do. So we love how that can integrate. Jeff is one of my best friends. Him and his wife Brooke have kids similar ages to my kids. And Jeff and his wife are in their mid-30s, and they bought their current home, starter home, before prices really started to take off. When we saw real estate appreciate, and then they refinanced to the all-in-one loan about a year and a half in, and they really took advantage at that point of a lifestyle where they were dual income, no kids. And they're fairly frugal people. And so because they had bought a fairly inexpensive home, I think they purchased it for $160,000 or $170,000. And then also had a really pretty structured, dialed in budget. Over the next 3.5 years after they refinanced the all-in-one, they paid their home off entirely. Now, one of the things that they've always dreamt of doing, they never really knew if it was going to be possible or not, was acquiring land and building, creating space for their family. And once they realized that they had this line of credit that they could tap into, and they could start the process of being their own bank, and obviously with the infinite banking concept, we can expand and grow that ability. They decided they wanted to acquire some land. So they purchased 20 acres and they started the process of developing that infrastructure. They've drilled a well, they've brought sewer and power. And as they've done this, they've drawn from the all-in-one. And in between these larger expenditures, they use their income and their frugality to pay that back down. So it's not like perhaps a typical construction loan where you don't really get to attack the principal until the whole process is done and you refinance. They got to take periods of time and pay that principal balance down using this all-in-one as their own kind of banking option. And over the next 2 to 3 years, they get to go at their own pace to develop and build out what they are talking about as their dream home on this property. And they told me, had it not been for the all-in-one, we would probably be 5 to 8 years out from this. We just didn't have the capacity to do it until we had this equity access to our current home and the structure that the all-in-one provided.
And kind of to add on to some of that, this really kind of goes to, and as we continued it through the remaining few examples we've worked with, it really is an easy way to say every person that we've talked to and every person on this phone call is likely going to have their own different scenario, their own different goals of what they're trying to accomplish. I am fairly confident, and Greg, certainly feel free to raise your hand. I'm not the most patient person when it comes to achieving my goals at the very minimum. When I want something done, I want to do it right now. And I'm confident that that's probably like many of you guys on this phone call. I want my debt paid off. Well, when do you want to pay it off? Well, obviously I want to pay it off now. Well, when do you want to buy that next house? When do you want to get that new vehicle? When do you want to be planning for your retirement? Well, my answer is now. I want to begin doing all of that stuff now. So if this is allowed for this individual to move that 8-year time frame of a 3.5 to 4 year time frame and do it in a way that they felt comfortable with their typical expenses, with their typical income, this person's goal will move up from the home they were in and move into the next home, which has allowed for them to fast track that without changing anything crazy. I mean, that if he didn't have to get another job to go get more income, he didn't have to have win the lottery to go and expedite this step in what him and his family's goals in life were planned for. And that's part of the uniqueness of combining all of these things together, is that it can help you fast track your goals. And again, we're seeing this happen with people we've worked with even just in the last 5 years.
Exactly. And it really does facilitate and expedite that process of going from that starter home to something different, whatever that goal may be. One of the business partners that I work with, and that Harrison and I work with in our loan business, a guy named Eric. Eric learned about the all-in-one because he had sent some clients to us to help purchase a house. And as we continued to work with folks that Eric referred to us, the all-in-one came up several times. And so he started asking questions. And we explained it. We kind of walked him through it. And eventually he said, gosh, every single year I house, I don't know how many thousands of dollars to save up for my tax payment at the end of the year. And it just sits in a savings account. It just sits there and does nothing for me, but I know that I can't spend it because I have to pay the IRS based on my earnings. And I said, well, check with a CPA because this could be considered commingling. I don't know the implications of that. But what Eric did is he checked with his CPA and he said, hey, can I take my money that I've earmarked to pay my tax bill at the end of the year? Can I house that money in the all-in-one during the year, lower my principal balance, lower my interest payments, and ensure that the overall interest I pay on the life of the loan will be significantly lower simply because I've got this lazy money that's not doing anything for me? And the CPA said, yeah, fire it up, put it in there. And so since then, this is about 4 years ago, Eric has housed all of his earmarked money for his taxes at the end of the year. And he has a fair amount of it. He's a pretty successful realtor inside of his all-in-one. And it's lowered his interest so much to the point that he's gotten to a point where he has paid off his primary residence. And the nice thing too, and you guys have probably seen this in the news, as markets change and as the real estate market has slowed, what Eric has now is a safety net, right? Being a self-employed borrower, being a business owner has its ups and its downs and it's market driven, right? And we hope that we never see those downturns, but we know that as a self-employed borrower, as a business owner, they do come. And so having funds that provide that safety net to the tune, in this case, of over $500,000 is a really, really, really comforting idea for business owners to be able to lean on. Hopefully you don't have to use it, but man, is it nice to know that it's there.
But even kind of further on that, and again, sorry to kind of just jump in right there.
Oh, please.
I was, again, had a conversation. I say this to a lot of people. I'm sure you guys have seen the movie Men in Black. You guys might actually relate to this one, but it seems like the all-in-one is kind of like that scene in Men in Black when they say, hey, this is the last suit you're ever going to wear. I tell people this is the last loan you're ever going to need. In fact, I'm trying to provide you guys with a solution to need to talk to me or a loan officer ever again. Not that I don't want to talk to you, but it's more like if you guys have this account that breathes and lives with you as you grow your life, as you earn your income, and as those hard times come and go, it gives you the flexibility of deploying it and growing your business so that when those hard times come, you have that extra safety net to kind of recuperate until the next good season comes around. It's not always going to be everything sunshine and daisies from here on until forever. And that is partially what all of this is about. The policies that Chris, Craig, and everybody is about is just that additional layer of a safety net that can protect you in the times when you feel like you may have slipped and fell. But as you continue to use out for whatever your goals are, you can achieve whatever it is that you need to achieve. I think that in many instances, we find that people limit themselves more than the combination of all of these tools would allow for you to. And what I mean by that is, well, I have $500,000 in equity. I don't know what I should use it for. Maybe I don't do anything with it. That's great. At least it's sitting somewhere, not and working for you. But for those individuals, deploy it and say, you know what, maybe I am going to do this policy. Maybe I am going to buy this rental property. Maybe I am going to start this business. Hey, you know what? Maybe I am going to my significant other slow down on working so that we can kind of focus on other things that maybe we're missing out on. Maybe I want to go see my family because it's years and I feel like all I do is just work, 80-hour work weeks, and I just can't find a way to take a breath. I have all these assets in the bank doing absolutely nothing. How can I use that? How can I better myself? That is really like the base of where we want to start that thought process. And it is just a thought process and getting over most of those hurdles.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, really, and we've said this, I don't know how many times over the course of the last 4 weeks, but the mindset shift to use more effective tools is really the main driver behind all of this stuff, right? had a mentor of mine tell me, if something is too difficult, you're not using the right tool. Find better tools. And certainly all of these concepts wrap into that idea. And so the last example, guys, and I'm kind of going out on a limb here. I'm putting myself on the spot. This is about me. Ever since Brittany and I got married, we've talked about wanting to hold real estate as a part of our retirement strategy. We like the idea of having rentals. We like what it offers in terms of tax benefits, monthly cash flow, et cetera. The question was never, did we want to own real estate? The question was, how do we get there? How do you figure out a down payment? How do you make this work? How do you manage it? Right. And so that was a conversation we started to have a long time ago. In 2017, we refinanced our starter home to the all-in-one, and similar actually to Jeff and Brooke, we were dual income, no kids, and we had an inexpensive starter home in the Spokane market. And we used a frugal budget and we aggressively paid down as much as we could. By the time we sold it in 2020, we had about $40,000 remaining on the balance. Real estate had appreciated, and so it earned us some equity, some really good equity. We used that to buy our current home and fix it up. And then we refinanced to the all-in-one. Well, what happens after you increase the value of a property? Well, your line of credit goes up, your available money goes up, even if your balance didn't go up. And so all of a sudden, we were in this position where we said, gosh, we owe X, but we have this big chunk of equity available to us. How can we best use that? And so we started this process of kind of cautiously starting to accumulate rental properties. And so we would buy a rental property, we would use the all-in-one for a down payment, make sure that we were in a position where we'd see monthly cash flow, and then we would start the process of paying back down that down payment. And we were pretty conservative with it. We wanted to make sure we didn't get over leveraged, but because of the increased cash flow that was now being deposited back into the all-in-one, plus our budget, it helped us to pay down these down payments that we had borrowed from ourselves in order to acquire real estate. And we got better and kind of more refined in our processes. And we did, start the process of using some private money lenders as well, in order to kind of leverage other people's money in that instance, with the safety net of the equity that we had in the all-in-one. Using this strategy, we've gotten to a place where we have 6 rental properties, and those properties are generating cash flow. And that cash flow is helping us pay down, again, the principal balance on our all-in-one. Now, we're not like all the other examples. I don't have my home all the way paid off. That's the goal. We're going to get there, but we're not quite there yet. But the nice thing is that we have additional cash flowing assets that will allow us to do that on an expedited process. And here's what I would say, similar to what Harrison said, he and his wife are starting the IBC process. Had I known at the time about the IBC, infinite banking concept, I would have looked at building out a policy so that I could borrow from myself and still have that principal balance gaining compound interest, as opposed to just straight drawing from the all-in-one. That would have been something really interesting to explore in this process. And so I'm excited to continue to learn more about that. But we prioritize real estate. What you prioritize for your investments, when you're able to tap into that equity in your home, right? Where you shift the narrative from being house rich, cash poor, and we flip that on its head. What you do with that equity may look different than us, but the idea is that you can tap into those things to then grow where you're at from now and improve on achieving those goals and checking those boxes in the ways that some of these examples have. Some of these examples have.
I mean, we're a little late to a lot of the people. I think I read somebody here on these every Wednesday since 2019, which is just amazing. If I had known about this back in 2019, I can certainly the investing pattern of what I would have done, and certainly what Greg would have done, would have certainly been drastically different. And I will give it a big congratulations to Greg. One thing about Greg, and I think one thing that sets a lot of the people, Chris and Craig, again, I keep referring back to these people because I've been to continue to talk with them, is that they're curious. And as something comes up and they don't know something about something that maybe I know, or maybe Steven doesn't know anything that Craig says, and they're not going to say, oh yeah, that's great, but I'm going to keep doing the thing that I'm doing. They go, hang on a second, repeat that again, talk to me. I don't think anyone on the call besides myself will say this. I'll say, hey, explain it as if I'm a 4-year-old. I think that the guys on the phone call can certainly handle more details, but the really unique thing is that it doesn't matter really where you start. For example, I bought my first home with a down payment assistance program in the state that I'm in, meaning I only had to put a half of 1% down. My first home was $250,000, and I put about $100 down or so. Now that home over time, I purchased it back in 2019, has appreciated. So I was fortunate enough to being able to buy a property back before values went through the roof. But because that value went up and my mortgage balance pretty much stayed exactly where it was for the 2 years that I was in the property, I was just essentially building in that equity that finally allowed for me to pull out the line of credit, the all on my property at that 80% loan to value. So it's really just baby steps. If you can't get into a product like this to begin the next steps, you should just say, well, throw my hands up, I'm kind of done. It's, well, let's build that game plan. What is it that we're needing? Okay, you don't have enough equity. Well, did you know that in many instances we can go up to 90%? There are ways of getting into it, but as values continue to, hopefully, not going to say that it's going to happen forever, as values continue to slowly trickle up, and certainly there may be a correction here in the next few years. I think that that is certainly a possibility based off of what's happening recently in the market. However, as that value continues to go up and your balance slowly is trickling its way down, it can be building that game plan of let's get these debts, let's build up the necessary credit score requirements. Let's build in the game plan of the infinite banking concept. Obviously, utilizing the can help you pay off those debts at a much faster rate than maybe even if you were to just do the I think you call it the snowball or the avalanche. As you continue to pay off those debts, build up your equity in your home, get into a product like this, then you're ready to be supercharged. I mean, it's like throwing a Toyota Corolla on top of your current engine right now and just rocking and rolling, and you're paying off debt faster, you're building your goals, and you're getting to where you want to be. And that Greg is the star child of that. Greg was a chemistry teacher. Greg, but when I met Greg, he was working at as a teacher. He then started learning about this. Wow, this is really, really amazing. He completely changed, did a 180 on his life from a two-income household to a one-income household. Greg likely thought he owned another rental property because he just didn't think it was financially in his picture. Greg decided to make a change to something that not only he's good at, and he is very teaching people and educating people, but he really does have a knack for numbers, and he's really, really good at kind of just looking back at the full picture, which is really from your own viewpoint. I know I have a hard time looking at my own scenario, partially why I have mentors that I go to and say, hey, help me. And the guys and gals in this community are really good educators to say, hey, here's something that maybe you haven't heard of. And that is what I find so admiring about this entirety, is that you guys are all interested in helping one another.
Yeah, the community has a real power when it's open-minded, curious, and is set up to help each other, for sure, for sure. So we want to pass this back over to Chris to kind of take us forward on what is happening next. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but thank you for the opportunity to share a couple of case studies about this, guys.
Yeah,
That was
thank you,
awesome.
guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, case studies are always really good, especially when they're that close, Greg. I didn't know these case studies were all that close to you. So that's a really, really good way to look at it, because you can tell that story so well. There's another person on here, actually two more people on here, who have very unique stories in regards to the all-in-one, how they've been using them. And listen, the all-reigning champ is HELOC Joe, because he's been doing this before we were in diapers. Well, some of you, but he's been doing this a very long period of time. Sorry, I just can't get off this darn diaper thing anyway. I'll get my head out of the gutter, Joe. But, talk a little bit, Joe, about how did you first hear about this strategy? And then why did you start implementing it in your life? Because I know you like to wait a long time before doing anything, like, was it almost 2 years before you started the IBC process? Yeah. So like you got into all-in-one, you started using this process. You literally made it just part of your family creed, like your whole family, this is all they know. So just tell everybody a little bit about your journey and your story and where you are today.
Back in 2010, I was sitting down with two mortgages in my hand. one mortgage with the duplex and the other mortgage with the house. One was at 3.25%, and I believe the other one was at 3.5. And I'm looking at the interest of what, and I'm calculating. I got two notebooks out, I got two calculators, and I'm going through, and I'm not paying 3%, Chris. I'm paying upwards of 12 to 14% per month that's going to the bank. I went to the bank and I said, something needs to happen. And I said, what is the way that we can pay off this duplex so that I can use that money? And he says, well, we'll get you a HELOC for $175,000. We'll pay off that duplex, and then we can utilize the left side and the right side, and then you'll have more cash flow coming in, because I was only having like about $200 cash flow. After I switched to that HELOC, I went from like $2,200 a month in a payment down to only I believe it was $780 in the HELOC. So now I had all that extra money from the rentals going to the velocity of paying down that mortgage. After I took that out with the 175, I went back to the bank and I got another one for 400,000, and I did the same thing with my house that I'm living in. So now I have 400,000. I became a private money lender, and I started lending that out, utilizing the leverage. I'm paying, a percentage to the bank for borrowing it. The money that's going into the opportunity is more than the money that I'm paying for the opportunity cost. Therefore, I'm just making a spread on all of that money. So now, well, I started back in 2010, and now it's almost 2026. 16 years, I have paid off my house 4 times, working on the fifth. And now I have 100% equity in my house, utilizing it as from Cornerstone with a HELOC. And I'm leveraged everything and making spread on it all.
That is awesome. But Mr. Craig Yenny, the man of the hour, the man who's good in the sheets, is been creating something secret, the Pepe Le Pew project, but you all know it to be the vault, because it's not so much of a secret anymore, but literally a revolutionary software that literally becomes the whole operating system. I'm going to go back, into when computers had operating systems, which they still do, but we don't talk about it. It's the operating system for everything you're learning here. Operating system for velocity banking, all-in-ones, IBC, all together. Matter of fact, Craig is right now finishing up a book called the Debt Blaster Trifecta, and it's going to be available to all of you. We just have to get it published really fast once he finishes it up, and that'll be free to all of you. But before we get to that, what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how the all-in-one, extracting the equity out of your house, like Joe and Greg and Harrison talked about, but how do you use that in conjunction with the infinite banking concept? And then for some of you, how do you use that in conjunction with the velocity banking concept that you've heard of, to get efficiency, speed, and build wealth through your own debts and expenses? Like, the one thing we find most people want is, when they're looking at debts or pretty much just building wealth, they want to do it without working longer. They don't want to spend more time at work. They don't want to spend more time in overtime. They don't want to go out there and take on excessive amounts of risk. They want to say, here's what I got. Here's what I'm working with. How do I make this work to solve these problems? And most people are like, there's just no hope. I'm just going to be doing this the rest of my life. But that wasn't Joe's path. That wasn't Greg's path. That wasn't Harrison's path. That certainly wasn't Craig's path. So I want to come over here to some of the questions and just knock a few of these out while we've got Harrison and Greg on here. Mark Perry asked, if my rental unit is owned by an LLC, will I be able to get an AIO loan? Now, I'll let you guys handle that.
Yeah, so it's a good question. It comes up a decent amount. Can you get an all-in-one loan in an LLC? No, but that's the most important part of this answer. There are lots of ways that we suggest that you consider working around it. If the all-in-one is the intent, the all-in-one is a financing solution, and you have a property in the LLC, you're always going to have to get an all-in-one in your name. However, one other option is you can put an all-in-one loan for a rental property in a living trust, which offers additional liability coverage in comparison to personal name. Or if you don't want to do a living trust, another option that we suggest is that most of the time people are using an LLC for liability protection. right? In case they get sued for whatever you might get sued for as a landlord. One workaround for this is you take title in your personal name, and then you get an additional liability policy covering you for an additional amount of liability. An umbrella policy is what it's typically called, for X amount of dollars over and above the value of your home. And that's the way that you protect yourself from liability. So you can access this type of functionality with the all-in-one.
Fantastic. Ed asked, can I use my 401k to fund my IBC policy? It's an easy one. You can, but you'd want to book a call with us so that we can go over the pros and the cons, because there are definitely cons to doing that. We a lot of times, Ed, will not recommend doing that unless your circumstances really warrant that making sense. So we'd want to do a call with you to kind of discuss the different aspects of using a 401k to fund an IBC policy. The second part to the question is a simple one. What is the difference between an all-in-one and just a first lien HELOC?
I mean, so a first lien, the all-in-one is a first lien HELOC. Really the major difference is going to be a second lien HELOC, first lien HELOC. The all-in-one is a first lien HELOC, so there really is kind of no difference in that. Typical first lien HELOCs have integrated checking and savings accounts, whereas in many instances, second position HELOCs don't have the integration as detailed as a first lien. Now they may have a checking account, but there's a lot of manual movement with money goes into this account. I need to move it to this one, and then it gets applied to my principal balance. But the all-in-one is like a product name like Kleenex as opposed to tissue paper. You know, they are the same thing. Ours is just the first lien HELOC that we have is called the all-in-one, which is the oldest first lien HELOC in the United States.
Great. But Warren asked, I have a mortgage and a HELOC. My plan has been to eventually pay off the mortgage and then get a new HELOC that I can use the entire value of my house. If I get an all-in-one loan now, will it replace both my current mortgage and HELOC? This is a fantastic question. Will it use the full value of my house and or just have whatever my remaining balance is of my mortgage be the outstanding balance? You get the rest of it. Harrison or Greg, do you want to hit that one?
Yeah, I mean, essentially the way that this works is that it would replace the first and the second mortgage you currently have, and it is going to be based off of a percentage of your value. So if your value of your home is, let's say, $500,000, you'll get a line of credit of 80% of $400,000. But if your first and your second add up to 250 grand, right out of the gate, you'll have access to the difference of those two, which is $150,000. It essentially seems like you're kind of jimmy rigging a first lien HELOC by having a second position HELOC where you pull money out, pay off your first, pay off the HELOC, and then kind of rinse and repeat. This allows for you to have more autonomy behind the scenes where you don't need to worry about doing any of that. You just earn your money and pay your bills, and everything else is taken care of for you.
Yeah, Chris Durfee said, so why would it have a different name? Chris, I can give you an example. I have a first lien HELOC on my house, and I did that through a local credit union, same one Joe did. But we do not, like the all-in-one they're talking about, we do not have that bank account that's directly attached to our all-in-one. And gosh, I wish we did, because the problem with the way ours are set up is it's a manual calculation. We have to do it all manually. I would have to take money from the bank account, move it to the HELOC, then move it back up. But the all-in-one with CMG does all that automatically. It like you had mentioned, it just makes it so much more efficient. And unless you got time to sit there and move money back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, the all-in-one is just a far better, more efficient platform than even like what I have with my first lien HELOC. I'm just going to hit a couple more and then we're going to dive into this. Marcia said, does an all-in-one have to be in both names? I was wondering this too. So let's say your house is owned by a husband and a wife and it's in both their names. Does the all-in-one have to be in both names?
No. And oftentimes we create a distinction between who is on the loan and who is on the title of the home. So in some instances, we may have one spouse makes a large majority of the income and the other spouse makes no income or a small amount of income, but has some unique debts. So in that instance, we may say, hey, we're just going to have the main income earning spouse on the loan. But when it comes to vesting and ownership from a title perspective, we're going to have both spouses on title. And so usually we do two things. We communicate what is best from a numbers perspective on the loan. And then we just allow the customers to kind of make a decision, right? Because sometimes, when you're working with, say, a married couple, they have a kind of an emotional tie to both of them being on everything. We deferred all of that stuff to the customers. They get to drive that decision. But can you have one borrower on the loan and then both borrowers on title? Absolutely.
Awesome. John had a really good question. I'm actually going to kick that over to Craig to kick off this next one, and Russ and some of the others that had Q&As. I'll let Greg and Harrison answer those questions because actually they're already doing it. Here's a really important thing. We've got a 2-day IBC intensive coming up that I want to just real quickly have Stephen kind of bring up and show you. Questions like John's are exactly what we want, because the difficult, the advanced stuff where people are like, I just don't understand the math. And that's our specialty. That's Craig's specialty. That's the vaults. That's its premise, is mathematics. Because listen, if something doesn't math, don't do it. It's that simple. Like, we will tell you that. If we get on the phone, John, with you, and we're looking at it and we're running the math through the software, and all of a sudden it doesn't math, guess what we're going to tell you? Don't do it this way. Let's find a more efficient way to do it. Now, I can't speak for the other gurus and the other people out there trying to do this that are just trying to sell you something, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to solve your problem. And if it doesn't math, it doesn't work, period. And that's our model. That's kind of the culture we've built here. So, John, we're going to hit your question because that is a good one. It's just deep, and I want Craig to hit on that. But before we do that, Stephen, can you just tell everybody about this 2-day training we got coming up? Because it's literally going to knock all these questions out of the way, and that's where they should be, is at that 2-day.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm super excited for. We've done it a couple times in the past. We've kind of learned from what we did in the past. We understand a lot of you that are on here right now are starting in different financial situations, different positions, different experience levels when it comes to taking control of your money, alternative investing, the infinite banking concept. I bet probably half of you on here are brand new. You're just learning about a lot of this stuff for the first or maybe second, third time. A lot of you might have been following for the last 2-3 years, and you're just ready to take it to the next level. So what we've been able to do is we said, listen, let's take all of our experience. Let's take our team and everybody that has, their specific expertise. Like we talked about, Craig is incredible when it comes to spreadsheets and showing the calculations and creating, different ways of showing that. You have Joseph's that's been doing this for years and years and years and years. Since I was a little kid in diapers, Joseph's been doing this stuff with investing in HELOCs and infinite banking and everything else. So we can all learn from each other. Our other money mentors that a lot of you guys have seen on Take Back Control Tuesday webinar, or the Ask Me Anything we do later on Wednesdays. You've met a lot of our money mentors. So we've all come together. We've all strategized. We've all come up with different things to teach during the 2 days. But the bottom line is if you're brand new or you're just looking to take IBC investing to the next level, this is going to be the place to be. The great news is it's virtual. Of course, we have the Private Money Club Money Tank event later in November where we can meet in person. And that's a whole nother level of just taking your business when you're actually in person. But this IBC advanced training is going to be virtual only. Good news, it's completely recorded. You can step away, you can catch up on it later, you can watch it again and again and again. So that's the cool part about it. But it is going to be September 12th and September 13th. We'll put the link over in the chat box so you can check it out. But we decided, hey, it's the end of the year. Let's just blow it out. The timing couldn't be better for this, educating everybody. So $47 barely covers what we put out, to put this thing on. Actually, it doesn't. But anyways, $47 what we decided on. So get a ticket, be there. If you can't be there, we'll send you the recordings. You can watch it later on. But you're not going to want to miss this because we've taken everything we've done over the last 5 years and then decades before that with experience and putting it all into this 2-day training for you guys. So hopefully you love it. I have a feeling you're going to love it, but we put a lot into it and we appreciate everybody being there. So we'll share the link and looking forward to seeing you on September 12th and 13th.
Yeah, I just threw the link up there, and I love somebody just said, wow, that's less than I spend at Starbucks. And you're right. We priced it literally to be so affordable that everybody could attend for the 2 days. And a lot of people, are going to say, oh, if I can't be there, like I'm not going to be around. I got a wedding, I got a graduation, I got this. I don't know what. no graduations now, but you get it. You can't be there. We're going to record it, edit it, and timestamp it so that you'll be able to just go right in and get what you want when you want it. So that's the value of it. And the other thing that we did is we know that when we do things for free, because we were talking, should we do this event for free, this 2-day training? A lot of people just don't take it serious. But when you put a couple bucks into something, you just take it more seriously. So that's what we did. And all I can tell you, go ahead, Stephen.
We've never done this before, so I completely forgot. I apologize. We're also giving away like $5,000.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I don't know. Actually, I don't know why we're doing this, but it's,
Holy
I don't know, it's
crap.
one of these brainchilds Chris had, and we're like, all right, now we got to do it. But go ahead.
I got to take a second because it's so fun. Listen, I have been for years talking to Shauna about like giving away a car. Like I wanted to give away a Porsche, and not a brand new one, but like an old vintage Porsche. And then we were talking, oh, let's do an Audi, like because I just love those cars. But then, we were going to give away a car. And how it was going to work is every person that was registered for the event, we were going to put them in a drawing for the car, and we were going to give it away. And then they had to be there each day because we're going to ask magic questions. We're going to ask 3 questions throughout the 2 days. If you want to be in the drawing, it's not a car now. Now it's $5,000 because Shauna and my wife both said, not everybody wants a car, Chris. They don't want to register it. They don't want to deal with picking it up. And if the thing breaks down, you just gave them a hunk of shit. I'm like, yeah, good point. They want the money. I'm like, fine, we'll give away $5,000. What the hell? And that's what we're doing.
So actually, it's even more than that, actually, Chris. So I think we added something without you knowing, but so
Better not cost me more.
So there's going to be 3 prize levels, I believe, and don't hold me to this, but I believe there's going to be 3. We're gonna have fun with this, guys. You guys know we always have fun, so we always give more than we say to. But I believe there's going to be 3 prize levels. So first prize, grand prize, and Sean is freaking out texting me right now. So grand prize is going to be your choice. So I think it's going to be 1,500 or 2,500 cash, or 2 VIP or 2 VIP tickets to Money Tank and hotel accommodations paid for at Money Tank the entire time. So basically, an expenses trip to Orlando Money Tank, or you can take the cash option. Second prize will be like 1,000 or 1,500, and third prize will be like 500 or whatever the balance is. So there's gonna be 3 levels, but the first prize will take the cash or the trip option, and then the other 2 will be the cash option. So that's what we're doing. I'm super stoked for it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So I put the link up there again, $47, get you a ticket, get you in the drawing for one of those 3 crazy things, all expense paid trip to Money Tank, 2,500, 1,000, and then 500 or whatever Stephen just said. Yeah. But we're giving away some hard, cold cash, but you got to be in it to win it. Gosh, I sound like an infomercial. All right. Enough of that. Craig, you've been working on something. And last night, I gotta preface this. Last night, like I've been so busy. I got home, and my daughter sat on my lap while watching one of her cartoons, and I read what Craig had sent me, which I was kind of upset when I first got it because it was like 20 some pages. And I'm just like, oh man, what is this? And he's like, it's my book. And I'm like, okay. I got through the first page, folks, and I'm like, holy crap. This is what people need. This is what they've been asking for. This is exactly what the whole industry needs because there's so many people in debt, they don't know how to get out of debt. So it's literally a guide, a step-by-step process to walk them through the Debt Blaster trifecta. And we're going to be giving it away for free to every single member who buys the vault. They're going to get this book for free. And we're also going to use this book as a different way to kind of get people to events and all sorts of stuff. But Craig, I didn't even know he was writing this. I think one day, Craig, this is Craig for you. He's like, hey, I think I'm going to write a little guide on the Debt Blaster trifecta. I'm thinking like 3 pages. And well, no, it's like 20 pages long, but there's not a single page, not a single word in there that isn't actionable. That's what I loved about it. When I started reading it, I'm like, there's no fluff. I actually, Craig, in my notes, did I not tell you to put some fluff in there? Like make this a little more fun, like elaborate on this? Because it was like so to the point that I'm just like, I get it, but can you have some fun with this? All right, Craig, show's yours.
So the first thing I feel I need to do before I get started, because diaper is the theme of the day, I just want to say for everyone out there that's trying to understand infinite banking, this is what I was thinking about. It's the best system to take you from when you're in diapers as a baby to when you're in diapers as an adult and everything in between. So anyway, I had to share the diaper
And this
thing.
is not a commercial for Depends. We are not promoting.
Oh, it's all about the diapers. It's all about the diapers. All right, let me share my screen out.
Yeah, let's make it about the vault and the debt blaster trifecta.
Just so everyone knows, if you wanted to register, that's where it's going to take you and put in your information. But our whole team's building content for that. It's going to be a really great time. So let's go into the vault, and I know in sessions 1, 2, and 3 of this whole series, we focused on what's the all-in-one, what is it, what is a first lien HELOC, what's the sweep account. So if anyone's listening to this and they don't know what those things mean, go back to episode 1, 2, or 3. And in those sessions, we did share how to use that, but part of it was really about getting out of debt. So whether you have credit card debts, whether you have, I'm going to come back to this, whether you have credit card debts, personal loans, medical debt, it doesn't really matter. What we're really trying to focus on is putting a program together for how to get out of debt. After you get out of debt, then we'll go into, if you go back to, I think last week's when Harrison talked about the Oreo, Harrison Greg talked about the Oreo. Greg even brought Oreos to the show and ate them in front of us. So that was a great time. And Greg, do you have any Oreos today? No, I don't know. Greg's on.
All my kids, except for the one in diapers, ate the Oreos. So
All right. Well, there we go. We throw the diapers in
Yeah.
again, but awesome. So what we're talking about with the debt strategy, because that's really the first place to start. And Chris, wouldn't you agree, if someone has debts, we really want to get those focused on before we move on to that next stage of investing?
Yeah, it's a big mistake. A lot of people have a bunch of debt, but they're like, oh, I got to invest in this. I got to lend money on that. I got to do these things, because they think that that is going to get them ahead faster, but that just involves risk. And we want to take care of the risk-free returns before we do any risk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's paying debt off.
Yeah, and so part of that program is we're trying to build into the vault the math that answers the questions, but we also want to meet people where they are. And the last thing we want to do is have people frustrated that they can't get to the end game. So we're showing them step one. Let's just assume you're a person that has debt, and this might be your debt profile. You might have car loans or other things in there. But the situation is, if you don't have the cash flow to get into the next stages, we still have a strategy, and it's all part of this debt blaster trifecta. We have a strategy to help get you there. Now, here's the good news, bad news. It's going to take some discipline. And here's what I mean by that. If these are your debts, you could approach what we call the no strategy, which is every once in a while I get a little extra money, maybe I'll throw it at the personal loan. And then a few months later, maybe I get a little extra money, I throw it at the car loan. And let's say eventually your personal credit card here at $2,500, where you're paying $75 a month, maybe that's gone. Maybe you've paid it all off. What do most people do? Well, they'll take that 75 and they'll go out to eat more often, or they'll go buy more stuff. So what I'm talking about is step one is we're going to build in some efficiency and discipline. If we just go down to the strategies here, and actually let me turn some of these things off, getting ahead of myself here. Step one is, after we've classified all of our debts, we're going to understand if we do a no strategy, which is just pay them off one by one, take the money and run, so go out to eat more often. Of that $78,000 of debt, it's going to take 181 months to pay all that off, and you're going to tack on another $30,000 in just interest. So what we're talking about is, if you do nothing else, or if you need to free up some cash flow, we're going to suggest that you either use the snowball, the avalanche, or the cash flow index. In this book that Chris is talking about that I'm writing, it's really focusing on why would you do one or the other? Well, there's math, and there's psychological reasons, and there's other reasons you might do one or the other. But in the math, we're saying in this particular case, do the avalanche, you'll get rid of your debts in 80 months. And instead of paying over 30,000 of interest, it's 22,000. So really, first step is classify your debts. Let's figure out what's the best way to organize them and be efficient. All right, so what do we do as a next step? All right, now in the velocity banking world, and Joe was explaining this, Harrison and Greg have been explaining this, the all-in-one can be a velocity banking tool where you take all of your income and you put it into that system. So instead of getting your paycheck and putting it into a checking account, we're simply just going to put that into our all-in-one account where it's going to buy down that interest throughout the month. So income goes into your Velocity banking tool, you pay your expenses out of it. But then here's where it can also become more powerful is you can take chunks of that credit line and throw those at your debts. So now let's assume that we have an all-in-one from CMG and we're using the North Point bank that has that sweep account on it. We're just going to start putting all of our paychecks into that account. We're going to pay our bills out of that account. And then we're going to take chunks of that and throw it at debt. That's what the Velocity banking structure is all about. So what we've done is we have about $591 of cash flow that otherwise would have just been left sitting in our checking account every month. That's now going to be left in our all-in-one account or Velocity bank account to buy down that interest throughout the month. We're also paying our expenses and our debts out of that. So that's why we have 591 left over at the end of the month. Now I'm going to go back to John's question real quick that was in the Q&A. John said, he's still trying to wrap his head around the math. I have a car loan at $55,000 at 8.59% with about $1,038 a month payment. He pulls from his HELOC at 7.34, runs that through a policy, borrows from the policy to pay his car off. And he's thinking, well, I've got multiple loans here. I've got money running around. This is exactly what Chris was talking about is we put those numbers in here. And John, I'm happy to meet with you on a one-on-one call and we'll just put your numbers in, make sure everything's lined properly, get your policy in there, get everything aligned. But at the end of the day, does it make sense mathematically to do that? And this is what the vault is all about. We plug the numbers in, we run it. And so from step one, what I would do, John, is I would put in your income. I'd put in your different expenses. What are your household expenses? What are your automobile expenses? What are your living expenses? Because ultimately for Velocity banking, we want to identify what that cash flow number is. What is that net cash flow that we're going to be leaving in that Velocity banking tool? Now, watch this. Remember how we had all those debts and it would take 181 months to do the no strategy or 80 months to do the debt avalanche.
Hang on, Craig, real quick. Can I
Okay.
change your language in how you say that? Don't say, hey, watch this. Say, hold my beer. Can you try that?
Okay, hold my beer. Hold my beer. Here we go.
Joe, we've got to work on him with that.
Yeah.
It must not be a Colorado thing. Anyway, carry on.
Okay, if it's Colorado, hey, hold my bowl, whatever. So, all right. So what I've done is I've activated Velocity Banking Boost, and we're boosting that to help pay down our debts even faster. So out of our all-in-one account, we're going to take $14,000, almost $15,000 chunks and throw it at our debts. Look at this. 21 months. All of our debts are gone. We haven't added any new money into the equation. We're just simply operating our money in a different way. We're keeping our money, our income into that all-in-one. We're paying our expenses out of it and chunking against our debts. In 23 months, we're completely done with paying off all those debts I showed you. And we've restored the money that we used out of the all-in-one. So we're kind of back to zero. And I'll just tell you right now, this is going to be your fastest methodology to pay down debts. You're going to pay the least amount of interest through this strategy. This is how Joe paid off his house 4 or 5 times. This is how I've paid off my house multiple times. This is how we use the Oreo strategy that Greg and Harrison talked about. Now, what I'm going to point out is putting your debts into the avalanche brings efficiency to your debt pay down. Velocity banking brings speed. But let's say we're done with our debts. Aren't we still kind of back at zero? Have we built any wealth? And so to John's question, this is where we now need to think about what component of debt pay down could build wealth. It's going to slow us down a little bit, but we're going to build wealth. And that's where we tie in the infinite banking concept. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use just a policy, it's a $30,000 dump in. I'm putting $775 a month of premium into my policy. Now, just so you know, I already accommodated for that premium in one of my expenses. I'm paying a BYOB specially designed whole life policy with $775 a month out of my cash flow. So that's already been taken into consideration. this 30,000 dump, it may have come from my all-in-one, it may have come from my HELOC, it may have come from savings. There's lots of places that dump in can come from. But now what I want to do, hey Joe, hold my beer, watch this. How is that? Is that better?
There you go. Much better.
All right. So now what we've done is we've used a cash value boost to our debts, in addition to our velocity banking boost. Let's see how this kind of pans out. Remember, the no strategy was at 181. Getting more efficient with our debts in the avalanche is 80 months. If we did infinite banking just by itself with the debt avalanche, we would be out of debt in 76 months. So you might go, well, Craig, that's not really all that exciting. It's still 80 months to do the debt avalanche or 76 months to do the policy. But there's something magical happening here, because in 31 months, we're out of debt completely. We've moved that debt into our own banking system, where for the next 45 months, we're going to pay that back. But what's different between the 31 months and the 45? Well, when the debts are gone, they're no longer on your credit report. They're no longer public to you. They're in your private system. And now you're in full control of how and when to pay that back. You can accelerate it. You can slow it down. But let's just say you stay on track and make those same debt payments over and over and over. 76 months, you're done. We paid a total of 13,000 in interest to others as opposed to 30,000. But here's what's exciting. You built wealth while paying down those debts. So now you have over $100,000 of cash value built up in this example policy. You've got over $500,000 of death benefit protecting your income, protecting your family. So you might say, well, Craig, I'm really torn between doing velocity banking and doing infinite banking. What if we did both? And this is what Chris was talking about when we say the name, the debt blast or trifecta. That's bringing efficiency from debt avalanche. It's bringing wealth building from infinite banking, and it's bringing speed of velocity banking. So when we tie them all together, we're still paying debts off in 23 months. And we have cash value building up. Because we paid the debts off so fast, we haven't really built up a lot of cash value in our policy, but we're starting that. So we have 5,000 in cash value and still over $500,000 in death benefit. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to show mathematically is what is the benefit of doing the speed with velocity banking, the wealth building with infinite banking, and the efficiency with avalanche, snowball, or cash flow index. But here's the thing. You might look at this and go, wow, this is, when do I pull money out of my infinite banking? When do I pull money out of my velocity banking? How do I do this? So we've put together a step-by-step approach in this detailed payment schedule, where month one, you're going to take that first chunk out of your all-in-one and throw that at your debts. Then you're going to refill. So when you see a blue in the velocity banking tool, that's when you take a chunk. We're going to spend the next few months filling our all-in-one back up before we take another chunk. Then we're going to fill it up, take another chunk. Over in the purple is our policy. So we're going to take a chunk out of our policy, then we're going to take another chunk out of our policy, and on and on and on. Eventually, all your debts are going to be gone. We're going to start paying our policy back. We're going to refill our all-in-one. And at that point, you're done. You've blasted away all your debts. You've done it with speed, and you've done it with capturing and building wealth inside of your infinite banking policy. All right, questions? Chris, any other thing you want to add to that?
No, just like I want to go back to the 2-day IBC intensive training that we're doing, the blueprint training, because in that training, we're going to go deep into the vault, showing how it works for IBC, showing all these different scenarios, how to pay off debt, how to get all the money back for your cars, how to use it to start businesses, buy real estate, lend on real estate and all that. But I think it's really important, you know, for you to show how all three of these things come together in one place, because we've been hearing a lot from Greg and from Harrison from CMG about the all-in-one. So we got that out of the way. Then we've been talking about IBC, and then you know, now we're talking about velocity. You know, a lot of people, when you think about each of these things, most people, I would say almost everybody up to this point, has always looked at one, right? This one thing. IBC, this one thing, velocity banking. And what we're doing is we're bringing all three together, but we're doing that with technology. It's the only way, and showing the mathematical and the mathematical benefit and the economic benefit of using all three as one. But just prior to this software, like, it would have been impossible to really, not impossible, but you'd have to be good in the sheets like Craig to do that, because it's just a lot and it's complicated. And this just brings it all together. And this is definitely going to be the fundamental piece that we use to show all of this in that IBC training. But we're going to show you the old way of doing it, right? The conceptual way that we did prior to this. And then we're going to show you how the software actually mathematizes it, if that's the right word. So I just think it's important. And also, a bunch of people are asking how to book calls with one of our mentors to discuss their individual situation. Like, I've got this going on, I've got that going on, you know, like the one question up there. Please, please, please book a call. We got the link up there right now. Also, if you're interested in the all-in-one, you got that link up there. I know there's a lot of links going around, but really the main focus here is the 2-day IBC intensive, because that's where you're going to get it all. And, you know, the vault, like, some of you are just like, I need that right now. Great. Well, you got an offer, 50% off, where you can get that. And if you want to book a call, as always, we are always available. Just click a link and book that. So I think you did a great job here, Craig, of showing all three together. You know, since you got a couple minutes, you know, what would be here? Actually, why don't we just ask the audience? What does everybody want to really know? Like, if just throw some ideas. Anyone have a question or something you really want to see the software do, or even just have us answer for you? Because one of the things I think a lot of people, you know, get confused on is, you know, we talk about scenarios, but it's not your scenario. So what would everybody like, or what would any of you like us to talk about? And also, Enza was talking about when they went to the vault page, they saw $16 a month. There's a little slider at the top, monthly and annual. You can pay monthly or you can pay annual. If you pay annual, it's a discount. But the offer we were doing is for the policy plan, which is the one that includes the IBC stuff and the velocity banking. The Debt Blaster does not. It's just basically just, you know, how to get your debt, you know, and the efficiency of how to pay your debt off. The policy plan includes the speed and the wealth building component, and that's normally $39, but, you know, because we offered it last time and we said we'd do it just for these 4 weeks. It's $19 with the offer, the discount code, the early bird. So hopefully that helps get some of the questions out of the way. But what would everybody like to see? More on the affiliate? Okay. What does the vault cost? Well, here, I'll just show you. Go ahead, Craig. You can keep talking. I'll just
Yeah, I was just going to throw out there one thing we haven't really talked about today is in great detail is once you're done with your debts. I mean, we went through Greg's use cases. Joe talked about kind of how he's doing the private lending, but one of the things in the vault you can do is structure loans and build promissory notes for private loans. And that part of the vault's going to show you the economic value of taking a loan from your policy, or, you know, eventually we're going to show it from the all-in-one. But a lot of people get tied up, like, why would I take, you know, money out of my policy, loan it to someone for 12%, and then have to pay a 5 to 6% loan back? That doesn't make sense to me. So one of the things we can do is show that. But before we jump into that, I just want to see if there's any other specifics that people want us to get into, and we can run through that.
There's a bunch of questions, but I think that's a good place to start. Actually, we already got John. John, if you had any additional questions about your particular one versus just booking a call and kind of going through those details, because I think that's worthy of a call. You know, here's one I do want to hit. Anna said this, and Craig, before you go into this, is your HELOC, so if your HELOC is X percentage and is less than the policy loan percentage, would you want to take the loan from the policy? It's an interesting thing. It's a very unique question, because the HELOC and the policy are both simple interest. So they're both going to be calculated the same. Where I would favor the policy loan over the HELOC loan, and there's lots of variables, but let's just talk math, is the policy loan, the insurance company only charges interest one time per month. Greg, how often does the all-in-one HELOC charge interest if you took a loan from that?
Well, interest is calculated on a daily basis.
Yeah, not the calculation, but how often would the client actually have to pay that interest or principal and interest?
One time per month.
Okay, so one time per month. So think about that. You have to, so cash flow wise, with the HELOC, the all-in-one, you're going to make a payment every single month. Even if it's just interest, you're going to make a payment once a month, which is disrupting your cash flow. Where the policy loan, the insurance company does not require you to pay interest but one time per year on your policy anniversary. So essentially you have 12 months where you're not disrupting your cash flow. So that's probably the simplest way for me to answer that, Anna. And I know there's a lot more factors that go into that, but I just want to get that out of the way. Craig, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to introduce the idea of in the vault, let's just say that you're going into what we call our loan officer. And the idea is if you're taking a $50,000 loan from your policy, and let's just say it's 6.75, just like Chris was saying, the loan interest can be added to the balance. You can pay it annually. So you have some flexibility in what you want to have done with that policy interest. But let's just say that we're going to structure a loan payback to our policy in a 36-month structure. And this is one of the things that people struggle with on, well, if I'm paying 6.75 and I'm loaning out at, 12, my spread is just a little bit under 6. Not really, because of that simple interest calculation, if you pay your policy back at that 15.38.15 a month, your actual effective interest rate is 3.23%. So your spread just got a lot bigger. And the way you can kind of factor some of that in is, let's just pretend that I'm going to take a policy loan and then loan it out to, this real estate development company called Acme RE. They're going to pay me 15%. And if you go look at Private Money Club, you'll see there's plenty of deals out there for 12, 15%. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm going to loan this money out at 15% for the next 3 years. They will be paying me $2,013.89. So I'm going to run that right back into my policy as a loan repayment because I don't need that monthly income right now. I'm just going to refill my policy loan. You're going to make $17,656.46 just off of the loan arbitrage and what you're getting out of that loan and paying back the policy. What we're not factoring in here is over that 3 years, what did your policy grow? Because we have compounding instead of our policy. So it's better than this, right? So think about once you get through debt, you have your all-in-one, you have your policies, you're building wealth. What we're trying to do is help you now factor in the loans that you would take from those tools and put that money to work. But we have something really exciting coming later this fall called a gain projector, which is going to map out mathematically the whole loan process, the investment process. So anyway, that's coming. But here's one of the things you can do once you design your note or design your loans, you can generate the promissory note. And Chris, I just want to make sure this is showing up on the screen. Do you see the promissory note?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So just so you know, this is a sample. We're not expecting you to take this and go do deals with this note, but it at least gives you a start. You can take that to your attorney. They can do all the language updates you need for your specific situation and state. But it's still pretty cool, even if you're doing, like for me, I use this kind of a thing for policy loans for my daughter when she, bought a car from me that I'm financing. I did a promissory note. Very official looking. It's got teeth in it. Hey, if you don't pay me, I'm coming to get your car. So that's essentially what we're trying to help everybody with is not only talk about these concepts, but then put them into real life use cases and execute on it. So
Have said this over and over, but I'm still wrapping my head around this. You can take a loan against the policy and the interest accumulation remains at the total value. Doesn't deduct the loan amount. That's Greg. Does that make sense? Do you see that one it's in the chat?
It was just to the hosts and panelists. I was just asking for a little sidebar, but every time you guys say this out loud, I want to make sure I understand this fully and correctly. You take a loan from the policy, your interest on the policy keeps growing, even though you took a loan from it. Like, it's one of the most basic concepts. I just want to make sure I'm fully wrapping my head
right.
around.
Your policy is going to continue to grow and compound even though you took the loan.
That feels like cheating. Everything in the banking world is like, it's blowing my mind. I know it's basic. Forgive me, I'm late to the party. That it's mind boggling to me.
Yeah, no, it messes with people because it sounds like almost too good to be true, but it is what it is.
A way that I explain that is if you take $10,000, go to Bank of America, deposit it into a savings account, you'd be earning a percentage, 0.1%. So you deposit 10,000 in Bank of America and it's in a savings account making you interest. Now you go into M&T and you say, I want to take a loan for 5,000 from M&T, but I want you to use the Bank of America account as collateral. So that would be the way that I kind of explain it in my strategy calls, because it's actually two separate entities because you're borrowing it from the general fund,
That's so
never touching
wild.
your money.
It's so wild.
And that's why the specially designed whole life policy is the best tool for this process, because you get that uninterrupted compounding while you're putting that money to work in other things. Where, I mean, sometimes people say, hey, can I use my brokerage account and just do a margin on it? Well, yeah, you can. It has a lot of different features and functions that the whole life policy has, but it's the process. That's a process of moving money around. It's just the whole life policy is the best tool that we found to use for this process.
Yeah, and also too, the other thing, there's a lot of questions about it, what one's better to borrow from. Like, listen, like the HELOC typically is going to have more available money. Like I'll just explain mine. Like I use my HELOC independently, so which is going to vary from the way Joe does it. So when I get a deal I want to lend on, or a thing I want to invest in, or a car I want to buy, I'll take a loan direct from my HELOC if my HELOC has enough money in it, buy the car, recapture the money. All the same rules back to the HELOC. But if I've got the money in the policy, like if I've got enough in there, that's always my go-to. Like I won't even take money from the HELOC unless it's like for a bigger opportunity. I use the policies just because it's more efficient, because I'm always earning interest and dividends. And Craig, before we run out of time, when you show this, it's very important because there's like 6 questions about how do people become an affiliate for the vault. So we got to hit that because I'm sick of trying to type that.
Joe, do you see your picture up on the screen?
I do.
Why don't you just run through this real quickly just so people see kind of how the money's flowing? I think sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So
I utilize my HELOC as my savings account, my checking account, and my investment account. It's where every penny that comes into my house goes. And then out of the HELOC, once a month, I'll pay the HELOC payment. I'll pay the monthly bills. Mostly everything is on a credit card. So I'm only paying the credit card once a month and the HELOC payment once a month. So out of the 30 days of the interest being accumulated, I'm only using it twice. So 28 days would be decreasing the line amount of the interest that I'm getting charged from the bank. That is the part that's the velocity part. So I'm decreasing it 28 days and only increasing it twice. Once the money goes from the HELOC, I will then run it through the policy, either, if you have a monthly policy or an annual policy. And then once it goes through the policy, I'll put that into the opportunity, the investment. When that money comes back in, it automatically goes into the HELOC once again to give me more cash flow and to perform velocity banking. And that would be the full circle that I use to run around it.
and so Joe, just one point of clarification, when it's time to pay policy premiums, that comes out of your HELOC, correct?
Comes out of the HELOC.
And when it's time you would cover at least the loan cost in the policy every year as well, right?
The interest that we pay annually, absolutely.
Yep.
Because when we pay the interest to the company, then the dividends will be reinvested right back in to the policy, and that will give us more cash flow and death benefit.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of show that and have Joe run through it. But back to you, Chris. Let's figure out what we need to do to wrap up.
All right. Well, can you just, the question about the affiliate stuff for the vault, can you just hit on that? Because I know we're fully capable and set up to run affiliates right now. Just tell people how they could do that. And then I'm still trying to get through the rest of the questions because they're coming in hot and heavy.
Okay. So on the pricing page of the vault, there's an affiliate sign up. And what I would suggest and I'm not sure who's asking about the affiliates, but if you want to just contact me, let's have a discussion to see kind of what you're trying to do, and we can figure out the best way to structure it for you.
Marcia asked, what can I do with the vault in its current state? We just showed a whole bunch of stuff that you can do with the vault, and that all works right now. Everything that you saw us show today works. The only thing that we don't have on there is the API links to the insurance company. That's coming. We don't have the gains projector, the major purchase calculator, all coming in the next couple months. And then somebody else was asking about, will this eventually work with my bank accounts, my financial accounts, my credit cards, and all that? Yes, that just all takes time. So we are able to do all of that because we built the software ground up. So that's all coming. Enza, if I take the plan, $39, which is $19 for early bird, I do have Debt Blaster included. Yeah, Debt Blaster is the fundamental. Debt Blaster is part of every single offering. These are great questions.
Yep.
Good ones to hit at the end here. But I'm going to answer a bunch of those after. Craig, is there anything else? Dex had a good question. 3 policy loans, 130, 120, 18. You have 30,000 to pay loans off. Would you pay 30,000 for the first one? Or would you pay the 2 loans, 28,000, and then 2,000 toward the 30,000? That's a great question.
Yeah, and Dex, one of the things I think we'd want to look at there is what are all of those policy loans treated equally? Are they all the same interest rate, same company? And if so, it may not make a lot of difference, but we can take a look at that. I assume that's on all of your One America policies.
I love Barbara's question. Do you have any competitors doing all the good you're doing? I can't answer that. I don't know, but I know that like the Vault, first of its kind, there's no one else doing 2-day IBC advanced trainings for $47. I know that for a fact. And there's nobody else that has the depth of knowledge and insight as our team does. And, getting someone like Mr. HELOC Joe, to literally jump on the phone and help you with all the dynamics of all these different things. Yeah, there's no one else I know that's doing any of that. So basically the answer, do we have any competitors? Who cares? Because we're just creating and winning, okay? This shit's about winning, because if you're not first, damn it, you're last. And we are first. So who cares about what competitors are doing? I don't even pay attention. I don't even care.
Well, I can tell you too, I mean, Joe and I have talked about this quite a bit. We had other careers. We're doing this as part of our retirement. We just enjoy helping people and talking about how we got to where we got to. So
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
Joe
All right,
was on the railroad and Craig was in IT.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this thing up, folks, because we're a couple minutes over. But thank you all for joining us for the 4th and final part of this 4-part series where we involve CMG and Greg and Harrison to show you exactly how to go from house rich, cash poor to just rich, and how to do it with the system that doesn't involve you to work harder, longer, or take on any additional risk. It's just you have to change the rules of the game. Otherwise, the bank's always going to win unless you change the rules of the game. That's what we covered these 4 weeks. If you missed any of the other 3 weeks, they're all up on my YouTube channel at the Chris Naugle. So also make sure all of you jump in and join us for our 2-day IBC intensive, the Blueprint, and that's going on September 12th and the 13th, which is Friday and Saturday, fully recorded, fully edited for every single person that joins us. With that being said, thank you so much. We'll see you this afternoon at the Ask Me Anything Happy Hour.